If you're in the market for an electric vehicle, there has never been more choice. And it's this variety that we're going to be exploring in today's video, looking at 3 different cars which go around the job of being a battery electric vehicle in different ways. We kick things off with the Polestar 2, which has been a presence on our roads for a little while now, but has become a go-to choice in the hatchback saloon car area. We've got a newcomer, the Honda Ny1, which follows on from the very adorable but slightly flawed Honda E and could prove to be something of a mass market idea. And finally, we have the GV60, which comes from a relatively new brand to the UK, Genesis. And this is a car which has the backing of Hyundai and Kia and its established learnings in the EV segment. So, if you are in the market for a new electric vehicle, or indeed a used electric vehicle, then which of these 3 cars is going to fit the bill the best? And what are the positives and negatives, if you excuse the pun, that each of these cars offer? Well, in today's video, we're going to be finding them out. So, without further ado, I think we should have a good look around each one. There are loads of great talking points when it comes to the design of the GV60. I really like these intricate alloy wheels which house these brightly coloured brakes. And elsewhere there's some nice chrome elements which help to lift the overall look of the car. What do you think about the contrast wheel arches too? I think they look pretty good, but they might be something of a controversial touch. The Ny1 definitely has a design which helps to stand it out from the crowd. This car in its bright white paint with the contrasting gloss black elements looks very futuristic moving down the road, and some elements that I really like are the contrast roof, the hidden rear door handles which give me a sense of old school Honda Civic, and the charging port at the front, which is really useful because it means you can get nice and close to the chargers themselves. The Polestar 2 may have been on sale for a little while now, but it still looks fresh. Polestar recently revised the design of the 2, and while it wasn't groundbreaking, it did introduce a more aerodynamic front end design, which is one of the biggest ways to separate the older 2 from this newer version. However, I still think it has loads of presence, and that's down to the proportions. It's square, it's chunky, and I think it does look really good on the road. As we found with other Genesis models, the interior of the GV60 is finished to a really high standard with lots of high quality materials used throughout. But what I really like about this cabin are the ergonomics. We've got lots of physical controls for the heating and ventilation, and there are shortcut buttons for the main destinations on the screen. The screen itself is both touchscreen operated, or you can use the rotary dial. And both make this car far more user-friendly when you are actually driving. You don't have to take your eyes off the road for too long when you just want to do something as simple as change a radio station. Rear seat space isn't too bad. The sloping roofline does eat into headroom, but because of the GV60's bespoke EV platform, there's a lovely flat floor in the middle, which means that all 3 people who want to sit back there do have a decent amount of legroom. And when it comes to boot space, you've got 432 litres of room to enjoy, and I'd say that's around par for the course for the segment. You can, of course, fold the rear seats down to extend that further, but just as standard, there is a decent amount of room. It's a shame that the GV60 doesn't have a frunk, however, as it does mean that you have to store those charging cables in the boot, and sometimes I find that to be a bit of a pain when you've loaded up the boot and you've got the cables underneath, because then you have to take everything out in order to charge up. The interior of the Ny1 is dotted between good quality and bad quality materials. There are some scratchy plastics down the bottom, and though they're in areas where you might not look, they don't feel that nice when you touch them. And obviously you've got this massive touchscreen, which I feel is being made to kind of, well, entice you away from looking at those areas that they might not want you to look at. It's packed with features. You've got media, nav, and all of your heating and ventilation controls, but I think it's just too feature dense for such a large area. And when you're driving, if you want to do something as just simple as changing the volume or changing the station, I think that's too complicated and it takes too much of your time away from the road ahead. I do like the multifunction steering wheel though that has proper buttons on it, so they're nice and easy to use. Rear seat space is pretty tight. This isn't a big car, and in terms of both headroom and legroom, I wouldn't say it's all that impressive. And with its 361 litre boot, it comes under rivals in terms of luggage space. So if you are after outright practicality, I think there are some better alternatives out there. The interior of the Polestar 2 isn't smattered with buttons or controls. Everything has a neat place for itself, and everything is built together with a nice robust style that we'd expect from a Scandinavian manufacturer. Polestar and Volvo have of course had close ties for a long time, and that's quite evident in this car. It's not overly jazzy, it all feels just built as it should be. There's a large screen in the centre which gets Android's automotive OS, and that means you get standard features like Google Assistant and Google Maps pre-installed, and it's a little bit more like a smartphone to use than a traditional infotainment system. We've also got a nice rotary controller for the volume. Step into the back and there's a decent amount of legroom. It's not massive and it's certainly not overly large, but it's kind of traditional for a saloon-sized car like a 3 Series or an Audi A4. And headroom isn't too bad either, despite the fact that we've got a panoramic sunroof. Go into the boot and there's 405 litres of space to explore, and it's nice and square and easy to access. Usefully in the Polestar there is also a frunk, and that's a great place to store the charging cables. I found that when the charging cables get wet, when it's been raining and you don't want to have to put them in the boot near all your things, a frunk is a great place to store them. Polestar comes in with a very long range, and the Honda delivers kind of user-friendly experience. This Genesis GV60 in Sport Plus mode is all about performance. With boost mode enabled, yes, it has a boost mode. It has 483 brake horsepower and will do 0 to 60 miles an hour in just under 4 seconds. So it is incredibly quick for a standard electric vehicle. Genesis claims that you should get up to 283 miles from a single charge, and because the Genesis GV60 can accept a 350 kilowatt max charging speed, it can take advantage of the very quickest chargers out there. And even when you plug in something like 150 kilowatt, you're going to be able to get the full whack, because this car can accept one of the highest rates of charge of any model on sale in the UK. But to back this up, we've also got really nicely weighted steering, a very hushed cabin that comes through a lack of wind noise and road noise, and the only real downside is that the ride is quite firm, particularly when you're travelling around town, but that's largely down to the GV60's weight and those big batteries that lie underneath the car. Against the Polestar and the Genesis, this Honda Ny1 is a far smaller car, and its compact dimensions make it a good fit for drivers who want to motor around town, or should we say electric motor around town. It's got a range of up to 256 miles from a single charge, and with 201 brake horsepower, you should see 60 in around 7.4 seconds. So it's got enough performance for that everyday driving, and you're not going to have to worry about merging onto a slipway and running out of volts, I suppose you'd say. However, it just feels as though the Honda Ny1 hasn't been thought about too much in terms of the outright driving characteristics. We've got the good dimensions, we've got plenty of tech inside, we've got good visibility both front and rear, but it just feels as though the low speed ride is too fidgety and the high speed ride feels sloppy and like the car just wants to wobble over. There's also a really pronounced electric motor noise, and though you might find that somewhat endearing, actually gets a little bit annoying, particularly when you're on the motorway or going along at high speeds for quite a while. The steering is light but pretty lifeless, although I can tell what the front of the car is trying to do. But it just always feels slightly unsettled no matter what type of surface you're on. That's a bit of a shame really, because I do think some of the elements of the Ny1 are quite good. It's also let down by a fairly sedate charging rate of 78 kilowatts, which I think is, well behind the times. If you think of the Jaguar I-Pace, a car that was released quite a long time ago, that has a charge rate of 100 kilowatts, and we often see that as quite slow, so 78 feels, a bit pedestrian really. We're now behind the wheel of the Polestar 2, and against the Honda and the rather mad hat Genesis, the Polestar feels quite grown up. This single motor long range version will do just over 400 miles from a single charge, so it'll do those long distances really easily and definitely rival something like a Tesla Model 3 for outright range. However, it'll still do 0 to 60 miles an hour in just over 5.5 seconds, so it's more than quick enough. And I like the fact that it all feels very solid, very tied down, although it does have a slight issue with its low speed ride. It feels quite fidgety, and on these big alloy wheels, it just doesn't deal with those potholes or those road imperfections all that nicely. We've also done a full review on this car, and you can check that out over on the Motors YouTube channel if you'd like to see more about it. But against these other two cars here, I'd say it treads a nice line between them. It certainly feels more direct, more tactile to use than the Honda, and obviously you're getting a good degree more range than the Genesis. So all in all, I'd say that the Polestar 2 makes for a very impressive package. What do you think about the gold though? I'm coming around to the gold. I don't know if that's because I'm getting older now, but yeah, I kind of like a gold car. Let me know in the comments what you think of a gold car. We've brought together quite an eclectic trio of electric vehicles today, and I think it shows the breadth of variety that is available in the battery-powered segment today, and that's got to be a good thing. More variety is always nice, particularly if you're in the market for a new car. What do I think of each one? Well, they've all got key attributes and negatives, of course, but I think that the Ny1 is the car that stands out in terms of just falling short of the crowd. It doesn't have the kind of user-friendly features that you'd expect, and I think it falls back in terms of practicality, which is what you want from a compact SUV. The GV60, well, that continues to impress us. Of course, it comes with a premium. It is more expensive than its rivals, but it's got plenty of range, loads of performance, and it feels special inside. It's also backed up by some ergonomic controls, and I love the fact you just get physical buttons and it makes everything easier. And then there's the Polestar 2, and I can see why there are so many of these on the roads today. This is a car which feels very easy to get along with. It's got loads of range with more than 400 miles from a single charge. But I just wish that low speed ride was a little bit better, as it feels too jagged and too sharp for our, well, quite broken roads. Which one would I be going home with? Well, I think I'd be leaning towards either the Polestar or the GV60. The Genesis in particular feels very special, but as I've mentioned, it does come at an additional cost. But if you're happy with that additional cost, then this is a very exciting new electric vehicle. But let us know in the comment section which of these three cars you'd be picking, or would you be opting for a different battery-powered model entirely? Thank you for watching this Motors 3-car review of the Genesis GV60, the Polestar 2 and the Honda Ny1. If you have enjoyed this video, leave us a like and let us know in the comment section what you think of each of these cars, or whether or not you'd be choosing an entirely different EV. And please remember to subscribe to the Motors YouTube channel, and if you hit that bell icon, you'll get a notification each time we upload a new video just like this one.